In one America, everything seems to be rising incomes, opportunities, investments, entire industries. And in the other America, everything feels like it's falling apart. For some people, the future has never looked brighter. For others, the future feels like a tightening trap. What's shocking is that both groups live under the same flag, in the same country, at the same moment in history. Two realities, two trajectories. So the question is simple, but massive. How did one nation split into two completely different worlds without ever officially breaking apart? Let's start with two American families whose lives reveal just how far the divide has grown. First, the Parkers. Together, they bring in about $300,000 a year. Both parents work in tech. They receive stock grants, bonuses, and benefits people in most industries never even hear about. Their company matches their retirement contributions. Their health insurance covers almost everything. They bought their first home in their 30s. They invest in index funds without thinking twice. AI doesn't scare them, it excites them. It's another wave of innovation they believe will make their lives even easier. But just a few states away, there's the Millers, $48,000 a year. Combined, two jobs that barely keep up with rising rent. They've skipped doctor appointments because the copay is too high. Their car needs repairs they can't afford. They don't have savings. They don't have a safety net. They don't have a way out. Whenever they hear news about the economy doing great, it feels like a joke because none of that greatness has ever reached their doorstep. Their version of America is not booming. It's cracking. What's unsettling is that these two families aren't rare. Millions live like the Parkers, comfortable, protected, even optimistic. And millions live like the Millers, stretched thin, anxious, one emergency away from disaster. Two families, one nation, two futures heading in opposite directions. And unless you see both experiences side by side, you'd never believe they coexist. The numbers nobody can ignore. For decades, Americans were told that if you work hard, you'll get ahead. But the numbers tell a very different story, one that millions are only now beginning to fully understand. In 1980, the median American worker could afford to buy a home on a single income. They could raise a family. They could take a vacation once in a while. They could save money for retirement, or at least hope to. But today, the median worker earns more on paper. But those dollars buy less than ever. Housing prices have exploded by nearly 300% since 1980. Rent has outpaced wages for decades. Childcare costs rival college tuition. Health insurance premiums eat up paychecks long before workers see the benefits. Meanwhile, the top 1% has watched their wealth rise not gradually, but exponentially. Income for the elite class has more than doubled. Their assets gain value through stock markets, tax advantages, and booming industries, advantages most Americans never had access to. So when you hear people say, the economy is great, what they really mean is, the economy is great for some of us, and that's the core of the divide. Not just inequality, but a widening gap where opportunity flows to one side of the country while the other side slowly sinks. The moment America split, this divide didn't happen overnight. It wasn't one bad year, one recession, or one election. It was a long, slow fracture, decades in the making, shaped by three major turning points. The first turning point came in the 1,970 seconds, when wages began to stagnate. Productivity kept rising, but worker pay stopped keeping up. For the first time, Americans worked harder without getting ahead. It was a subtle shift, almost invisible at first, but it laid the foundation for everything that followed. The second major turning point arrived in the 1,990 seconds during the era of globalization. Factories moved overseas. Manufacturing towns that had powered America for generations lost their economic heartbeat. Some cities reinvented themselves, others never recovered. Entire regions fell into decline, while coastal metros surged forward. And then, the third turning point. The 2008 housing collapse. It wasn't just a financial crisis. It was an accelerant. After the crash, asset owners, people who already had homes, stocks, or wealth, recovered quickly. But Americans without assets? They fell further behind than ever. That gap didn't close, it widened. And in many ways, it never stopped widening. By the time the country entered the 2010 seconds and 2020 seconds, the pattern was locked in. One America benefited from innovation, investment, and rising asset values. The other America absorbed the shocks, rising rents, unstable jobs, and shrinking economic mobility. This wasn't random. This wasn't accidental. It was a turning point in American history, one that quietly created the two Americas we now see today. Housing, the first great divide. Out of all the forces dividing America today, housing may be the most powerful and the least understood, because where you live determines almost everything about your future. Your job, your safety, your schools, your network, your health, even your lifespan. And for millions of Americans, the housing system has quietly become a machine that sorts winners from losers. In blue states, especially California, Washington, New York, Massachusetts, home prices have soared into the stratosphere. Not just increased, but multiplied. A starter home that cost $180,000 in the 1,990 seconds can easily cost $1.2 million today. And it's not because the homes changed. It's because the rules changed. For decades, zoning policies originally sold as protecting neighborhood character have tightly restricted new housing construction. This means demand keeps rising while supply barely moves, driving prices higher every single year. People who already own homes build wealth without doing anything. People who don't, they fall further behind. So, meanwhile, in many red states, Texas, Florida, Tennessee, the Dakotas, the story looks very different. Housing is cheaper, more available, easier to build. You can buy a home in your 20s. You can start a family earlier. But the trade-off is real. Wages tend to be lower, and without the same level of high-paying industries, economic mobility remains limited. So America ends up with two realities. One where homes cost a fortune, but high-income jobs exist. And another where homes are cheap but good-paying jobs are scarce. And then there's the deeper problem. The benefits of homeownership compound over time. Equity grows. Property values rise. Wealth builds. This means every decade, homeowners move further ahead and renters fall further behind. Today, housing wealth is one of the largest drivers of generational inequality. Boomers bought cheap. Gen X bought early. Millennials and Gen Z are trying to buy into a system that has already shut the door. That's why economists now talk about housing winners and housing locked-out Americans. Two different classes, two different futures, created by one system that was never designed to be fair. Education, the debt machine. If housing is the first great divide, education is the second, and it's become one of America's biggest traps. For decades, Americans were told that college was the guaranteed path to the middle class. But what they weren't told was how dramatically the cost of that path would explode. In the past 40 years, college tuition hasn't just risen. It has increased by more than 8 times. Nothing else in the American economy, not food, not housing, not healthcare, has risen this fast, this brutally, for this long. And because wages didn't rise with it, students filled the gap with debt. Massive debt. Today, more than 43 million Americans owe student loans. Many will still be paying them in their 40 seconds, 50 seconds, or beyond. This isn't just a financial burden. It's a life delay. It's marriage delayed, homeownership delayed, starting a family delayed, dreams delayed. And then there's the trap inside the trap, the credential requirement. Entry-level jobs that once required a high school diploma now demand a degree. Not because the job changed, but because the system changed. So workers pay more for degrees just to qualify for jobs that pay the same or less than they did 20 years ago. And at the top of the system are America's elite colleges, Harvard, Stanford, Duke, MIT, institutions that open doors to the wealthiest careers in the country. But the truth is, these schools overwhelmingly serve students from the richest households, the top 1%, the top 5%, kids who never had to worry about debt in the first place. So the education system becomes a pipeline. Opportunities flow upward to the wealthy. Debt flows downward to everyone else. And just like that, America's education system, once the engine of upward mobility, becomes one of the engines of division. Two Americas, the debt-free and the debt-burdened, the credentialed elite and the credential trapped. Healthcare, the American paywall. If you want to understand how two Americans can live in the same country but experience two different realities, look no further than healthcare. In one America, people have strong employer insurance. They get annual checkups. They receive preventive care. They have specialists, prescriptions, mental health support, all at reasonable cost. Their system is not perfect, but it works. But in the other America, the one tens of millions inhabit, healthcare feels like a constant threat. Premiums rise every year. Deductibles climb. Co-pays drain paychecks. And one unexpected medical emergency can wipe out a family's savings overnight. Medical debt is now the single largest source of debt in collections in the United States. Not credit cards, not student loans, medical bills. And it's not just numbers. It's stories, painful, heartbreaking stories of Americans who were financially stable until they got sick. One woman went to the ER for a sudden breathing problem. She survived. But the bill was $38,000. Her insurance covered less than half. She declared bankruptcy 6 months later. One America receives world-class health care. The other America avoids the doctor at all costs, hoping nothing goes wrong. When your health, the most basic part of being human, depends on your income, your job, or your zip code, you don't just get inequality. You get two separate experiences of life itself. Geography. Red America versus Blue America. And then there's the divide you can see on every election map, but almost no one talks about economically. The geographic split. On the coasts, New York, California, Washington, wealth has concentrated at levels unmatched in modern U.S. history. Global finance, tech headquarters, entertainment empires, innovation labs, billions of dollars of value created every single day. But in much of the heartland, Ohio, Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, the story is the exact opposite. Factories closed, jobs automated, populations shrinking, downtowns fading, two different Americas, separated by thousands of miles and millions of experiences. And then came migration, the great reshuffling of America between 2020 and 2024. Texas boomed, Florida boomed, Tennessee boomed, Idaho boomed. People fled high-cost states for lower taxes, cheaper housing, and more space. And California? For the first time in state history, it experienced a population decline. Not because people stopped loving California, but because California became too expensive to love. So America now has two economic maps layered on top of each other. One map where wealth clusters tightly in coastal megaregions, and another map where opportunity spreads unevenly across the South and Midwest. These aren't just locations on a map, they are economic identities. Two Americas separated not by borders, but by geography, opportunity, and the cost of simply existing. Perhaps nowhere is America's split more visible than in the future of work, because right now, the gap between the people who build new technology and the people replaced by it is widening faster than at any point in modern history. On one side, the tech elite are experiencing a kind of economic supernova. AI startups raising billions, engineers doubling their salaries overnight, a small group of creators building the tools that will define the next century. For them, AI is not just innovation, it's acceleration. It multiplies their productivity. It multiplies their income. It multiplies their power. But for millions of Americans, AI doesn't feel like acceleration. It feels like erasure. Tens of thousands of office jobs, from administrative assistants to analysts, from customer service to back office roles, are being automated away. Some quietly, some brutally. And while politicians describe AI as the future, many workers describe it as a countdown. This isn't just about job loss, it's about identity loss. Because for decades, America promised that if you earned a degree, worked hard, and joined the professional class, you'd be safe. But AI is rewriting that promise. White-collar jobs were supposed to be untouchable. Now they're the first to go. So America splits again. Not left versus right, not rich versus poor, but creators of AI and victims of AI. One group shapes the future, the other braces for it. And the truth is, this divide is only beginning. Culture split two realities, two truths. If the economic divides weren't enough, America faces another fracture, one that is quieter but just as dangerous. A divide in reality itself. Americans no longer live in the same information world. They live in media bubbles curated by algorithms, reinforced by communities, and strengthened by identity. Two people can watch the same event unfold and walk away believing two completely different stories. In one bubble, America is thriving. In another, America is collapsing. In one bubble, the future looks hopeful. In another, the future looks terrifying. These aren't just different opinions. They are different facts. And when facts diverge, beliefs harden. When beliefs harden, identity fractures. And when identity fractures, communication dies. That's the tragedy. Millions of Americans aren't just disagreeing, they're living in parallel realities that no longer overlap. And in this split-screen nation, conversations become arguments. Arguments become resentments. Resentments become silence. How can a country solve big problems when half the country believes problems exist and the other half believes they don't? This cultural divide doesn't just separate Americans, it isolates them. It builds invisible walls inside a nation that once promised unity. Another divide, one often whispered about but rarely confronted, is the justice gap. Because America does not have one criminal justice system, it has two. For wealthy Americans, justice is negotiable. A good lawyer, a clean record, a lenient sentence. Money buys time. Money buys options. Money buys second chances. But for poor Americans, the system looks completely different. It's crowded. It's rushed. It's unforgiving. When you can't afford bail, you sit in jail for weeks, sometimes months before trial. When you can't afford a private attorney, you're overwhelmed by a system too busy to truly represent you. That's why so many low-income Americans accept plea deals, not because they're guilty, but because they're trapped. Plead guilty, and you go home today. Fight it. And you might lose your job, your home, even your family while you wait. This is not equal justice. This is divided justice. And this divide creates generational consequences. A wealthy teenager and a poor teenager can make the same mistake, but walk away with completely different futures. One gets a warning, the other gets a record. One moves on, the other carries the weight for life. That is America's justice gap, a system that protects one group and punishes another. The health gap. Life expectancy split. Sue Axade-Bow. Perhaps the most shocking divide of all is the one measured not in dollars, but in years. Because depending on where you live in America, your life expectancy can differ by 10, 15, even 20 years. In many blue counties, especially in coastal states, people live longer, healthier lives. Better hospitals, better food options, better air quality, better preventive care. But in many red counties, particularly in rural regions, life expectancy is falling. Opioid addiction, chronic illness, hospital closures, suicide rates soaring. This is not politics. This is survival. One America is living longer than ever. The other America is dying younger. And when a nation begins to split by lifespan itself, that's not just inequality. That's a warning. A warning that two populations are forming, one with hope, one without it. The American dream, real versus lost. And all these divides, housing, education, healthcare, work, justice, geography, converge into one final fracture, the future of the American dream. For the boomer generation, the dream was real. A single income could buy a home. College was affordable. Healthcare was manageable. Jobs were stable. Retirement was possible. That America, let's call it America Haitian, still exists, but mostly for older generations. For millennials and Gen Z, they inherited a different country. A country where homeownership is delayed 10 years, where wages stagnate while costs explode, where debt starts early and ends late, where AI threatens job security, where the dream of doing better than your parents is no longer guaranteed, a nation where the dream feels out of reach, even for those who do everything right. So the American dream hasn't disappeared. It has split into a version that still works and a version that never arrives. And when dreams split, so does the nation. One generation remembers what was. Another generation questions what will be. And for the first time in modern history, younger Americans look at the future not with confidence, but with doubt. Because the country that once promised a single shared dream now delivers two very different realities. Here's the truth almost no one says out loud. America didn't split by accident. It was engineered slowly, quietly, piece by piece through decades of policymaking that reshaped the economy in ways most Americans never saw coming. Take the tax system. Starting in the 1980 seconds, tax cuts overwhelmingly favored people who owned assets, not people who earned paychecks. Capital gains dropped, corporate taxes fell, estate taxes shrank. And who benefited? People who already had wealth accumulated more of it. People who didn't were left standing still. Then came financialization, the shift of America's economy from building things to trading things. More money flowed into Wall Street. Less money flowed into workers. Profit came from moving capital, not from building factories or paying wages. And as finance ballooned, the real economy hollowed out. Corporate consolidation added another layer. The small businesses that once defined American towns were swallowed by mega corporations. A handful of companies now control groceries, airlines, media, housing, healthcare, even prescription drugs. Competition disappeared, prices rose, choices shrank, and power concentrated at the top. So when people ask, why are there two Americas? The answer is simpler than it seems. Because the system rewarded one America, the asset-owning, investment-holding, high-skill group, and turned the rest into economic spectators. This wasn't some grand conspiracy, but it was the predictable result of policies that assumed everyone starts from the same place, when that hasn't been true for generations. The divide wasn't just allowed to happen, it was built. Why the split accelerated after 2008? If the groundwork for the split was laid over decades, 2008 was the earthquake that exposed the fault line. When the housing market collapsed, millions of Americans lost their homes, their savings, their stability. But once the dust settled, something remarkable and troubling began to happen. The Federal Reserve launched quantitative easing QE, pumping trillions of dollars into financial markets. It was meant to stabilize the economy, and it did. But it also triggered the single greatest asset boom in modern American history. Stocks soared. Home prices rebounded faster than ever. Wealth exploded, but only for the people who already owned assets. For the young? For the working class? For the millions who never recovered from the crash? QE didn't lift them. It left them behind. Young Americans couldn't buy homes before prices surged. Middle-class families without investments watched the recovery pass them by. And renters found themselves competing in a housing market that now mostly benefited investors. By the mid-2010 seconds, the old middle class, the one that once formed the heart of American life, began to fracture into two groups. Those whose assets grew faster than their income, and those whose income could no longer reach the American dream. 2008 didn't just weaken Americans financially, it split the middle class into two completely different futures. Is America becoming two countries? And now, we arrive at the question people are suddenly willing to ask. Is America becoming two countries? Look at the map. States aren't just divided by politics. They're divided by tax systems, cost of living, access to healthcare, attitudes toward education, business regulations, cultural values, and even life expectancy. In some states, childcare is cheaper, wages are rising, schools are improving, and industries are booming. In others, hospitals are closing, wages stagnate, taxes rise or fall unevenly, and services collapse. One America is built around high innovation, high income, and high cost. Another America is built around low cost, low services, and low opportunity. The result? A country that is legally one nation, but culturally and economically behaving like two separate societies. We remain an economic union, a single currency, a single market, a shared financial system. But socially, we are drifting into two nations with different expectations, different realities, and different futures. And the speed of that separation is accelerating. So here's the truth at the center of everything. America isn't collapsing. It's splitting. It's becoming two nations not with borders or flags, but with opportunity, with wealth, with health, with time itself. For one America, the future shines brighter than ever. For the other, the future feels like a narrowing hallway. And now the country stands at a crossroads. Because the real question is no longer, how did this happen? We know how it happened. The real question is, what happens next? Do these two Americas drift further apart until they become strangers living under the same flag? Do we watch the gap widen until the idea of a shared national identity becomes impossible? Or do we choose to rebuild the bridge? A bridge built through policy, through opportunity, through a shared belief that a nation is strongest when it moves forward together. The future isn't predetermined, the split isn't final, and the American story isn't finished. It's being written right now by the choices this generation makes. Because in the end, a nation doesn't fall apart in a single moment. It falls apart slowly, until someone decides to pull it back together. And that's the choice ahead.